Hey, welcome back to JG3 Reviews. My name is James, and here I like to explore the world of fountain pens, ink, and paper. And today, it is a retractable fountain pen day. This is the new pen from Endless called the Phantom. It was a Kickstarter project, and I jumped in fairly early to support that project. I like innovation in fountain pens, and I like a good clickable, retractable fountain pen. And I found the design of this one kind of interesting. Endless has taken a different approach to the retractable fountain pen design, and I like the basic premise. The mechanism is not overly complicated, and that's all fewer things to go wrong, right? Right? Should be. It should be. But has anything gone wrong? Has anything gone right? Well, we're going to talk about those things, what I like, what I don't like. I'll talk about the design and the function of the pen, and I did do a dry out test. Actually, twice I did a dry out test. So I've got those results and I'm eager to share them with you. So let's go. All right, when you get the pen, it comes in this cork packaging, which also serves as a pen rest. Kind of handy, little dual purpose, nifty little thing. Also inside the packaging is the adapter, which you use when you use a cartridge instead of the included converter. And those instructions are also included. They show you how to fill the pen, how to put the pen back together properly, how to use the included converter, and the included adapter. Now, if you'd like to see a full unboxing, you can check out that video. The link is in the description below. Okay, let's look at the style of this pen. First, I like it. It is meant to be very modern, sporty, race car inspired. I also get, unintentional as they may be, late 60s vibes from this pen, a little mid-century modern thing going on, which probably just speaks to the continued relevance of that good style done 60 years ago that still influences design even when it's not intentional. This pen would have really fit in nicely in the Rat Pack era, wouldn't it? All right, anyway, it came in clear as well, but I thought the black really suited the design well. Let's start at the click end as we go down the features and the design, because the click is the most important part of this particular design. And as you heard that, it probably did remind you a little bit of the sounds of a pilot vanishing point or capless. A little bit different. There's a completely different mechanism and approach to this and different materials, but there's a similar feel and sound. This is a bit lighter click at the beginning, and then it kind of stiffens as you go down and becomes closer to that of the pilot. It's worked well. I've had no issues with the clicking mechanism whatsoever, and I like the shape of it, kind of continuing that fast while standing still look. You have this angled cut, which also then curves into what I'm going to call the bottom side, the resting side of the pen. And that's the angle you're normally going to come at that. So ergonomically, that feels pretty good. And I like that. It widens then into the body, which itself is a tapered design. The midpoint is a nice large diameter, similar to, say, a platinum Curados. But that too tapers down in this direction to a very comfortable size, and you can easily find a good place for your pen to rest in your grip. And that clip is nice and narrow so that it really is not in the way at all. And I find this a comfortable pen to write with. And then we get to the business end of the pen, and hopefully that light will show you a little bit of something. It's very difficult, but there are two flaps here inside that open and close to keep that nib from drying. And we'll talk about that part more here in a little bit. But that nib will come out when you depress the button, obviously. Harder to do from this side. Now, I like the material choice there because there's much less risk than metal of damaging that nib and causing wear on that nib. And so I think that's going to work well. Now, I will point out just a little bit of a niggle. I've got a few with the pen. You do notice the seam here, and there's something of another marked line on this side. And I do just find in different places that the construction quality is not up to, say, the Curados or the Vanishing Point. Now, this is at a lower price point. I paid $39. MSRP is expected to be $49. But, it also has to contend with competition like the Jinhao, which is as much cheaper than the Phantom as the Phantom is than the Curados or the alloy nibbed capless or vanishing point. So it's a very competitive space, and just, a few little finishing things like that make that competition stiffer, let's say. But overall, I do like the look, the design, the feel of the pen. Overall, I do like the design, but let's get down to the innards of this pen. I don't use the word innards nearly enough. Anyway, simple, simple, simple to take this pen apart. Not complicated at all. Probably the simplest I have seen of a well-functioning retractable fountain pen. First, you do get an included converter, and it is the slide converter. I'm obligated by my own conscience to tell you that these are not my favorite, but it's okay. They work, it functions, and it's better than not having one at all, right? Now, this is what I like to call plastichrome. That is not metal, that is chromish covered plastic. And then the rest of the section and feed are also plastic. And then you come to that steel tubular nib. Now, I haven't tried it because I had already inked it up when I thought about it, but it looks like a lot of other tubular nibs that I've got, and I wonder if they're interchangeable. I'm going to have to test that later, and if they are, that could open up a lot of other possibilities for nib choices, right? Anyway, this is all very simple. This is an international standard converter. Holds a small amount of ink, a little bit less than, say, an international short, and that's why you might want to use a short and use that adapter. But like I say, it functions very easily. You'll notice the arrow there. That's so that you remember to line that arrow up with the clip when you put this back into the pen. And that is just very, very simple. You see how that went? And there's just not that much to this. Really no more complicated than any other fountain pen in terms of filling it up and things like that, cleaning it out. Very, very simple. Now let's talk about dry out for a second, because that's always a concern, for me anyway, with any retractable pen. For example, when Lamberto copied the Curados, they did not successfully match the Curados's ability to resist drying out. And I have been shocked sometimes at how long I can leave this pen sitting and come back and click that pen and it just writes. Mine has been very reliable. I got it after they addressed some initial issues with the very first run of Curados pens, and I've had no issues with this pen whatsoever. I really like it. I also have really good performance from my Pilot capless, and this is a capless. I got this on Amazon, and I paid $69 for this a while back, so just $20 more than this. So I think this steel alloy nibbed version of the pen is pretty good and stiff competition to the Phantom Endless. I think this belongs in a comparison. And I do not have dry out issues with this pen. I can leave it for a week, come back, and it's going to be fine. I can say the same for my Mahjong A1. It's been a very reliable pen as well. So what about this one? If I'm using it throughout the day, there's no issue whatsoever. If I leave it to sit for a couple of days, I have not had an issue. But I did a test week, and at the end of that week, I clicked the pen and nothing. Nothing, not even a little dry crusty. I got no ink flow whatsoever. Now all I had to do was dip it in filtered water and it picked right back up. No issue. For me, that's not a huge deal. If I've left it for a week, that can happen with a lot of pens that I would still consider good pens. And for retractable fountain pens, I think that's a very reasonable challenge. I then left it for another week, tried it again, and got the same results. So, for keeping the pen from drying out over the course of, I'm going to say, a couple of days, the function works just fine. So if you're going to use the pen on a regular basis, you're probably not going to run into too many problems. So if you're looking for something that can do a marathon in the desk drawer and then write, this is probably not going to be it based on my experience. I would look at another review or two by other people that address the same thing so that you get more than a sample of one, but that is what my two tests resulted in. All right, there is the Endless Phantom, and our size comparison really ought to go pretty fast today. The very simple. Here is the Platinum Curados. Again, this is just a great retractable fountain pen. A little bit of stiff competition, but this one is also a lot more complicated to the point of intimidating some newer users to retractable fountain pens. And then there is the Pilot capless or vanishing point, depending on your market. This one has been around since the 60s, proven itself well, excellent pen. And if you're willing to go with the alloy nib, more approachable than you might think. And then I have, just for more standard pen reference, a TWSBI Swipe, which is about the same size as a Lamy Safari, and gives you an idea of how this compares to a standard fountain pen. Now, here are the pens in their writing form, and things are much closer together. I always find this interesting with retractable fountain pens. Once you click that knock, things always seem to even out. That really long Curados is now about the same. The vanishing point is about the same. The swipe is the shorty here. What really tends to make a difference, and I don't have them lined up very well today, sorry, is the placement of the clip. And in that case, I think the Phantom, they did a good job. They made this a very thin clip, or a narrow clip. It works very well. I've carried this in a shirt pocket, and it is just fine. The knock is not so long that it becomes unruly in a pocket like the Curados is, and it doesn't get in the way of your grip. Now, again, that all depends on your grip. I write in a way that, none of these pens really bother me, but some people they really bother. All right, as always, the most important thing is going to be how the pen writes, and I am going to bring a couple of those other pens into this here in just a second. Now, as I said, I find it a comfortable pen to write with. One thing I didn't expect is that there is a little bit of springiness, but I don't think it's the nib. I think it is the mechanism of the pen itself. This is a medium. You can get this in medium, fine, extra fine, and then you can get some specialty grinds. I know there is something of a mini Fude nib, I believe. There is an Architect nib, if I'm not mistaken. Double check me on all of that, but those things are there. Here is the line width, which is definitely something I want to talk about and compare. The grind on the nib is just a bit narrow to me to be considered a medium. And on some other papers I've written on, it's been even thinner than it looks here. This is just an inexpensive notebook, Vietnamese paper, pen and gear from Walmart. Good paper though, with really good performance. Let me try for a little bit of line variation. I don't think I've done that. I wouldn't expect any. You can get a little. Yeah, it's not too bad. You can get a little bit of variation there. Not something I would push or ask for at all. Wetness is a little dry, a little bit on the dry side, but it's workable. I mean, I think this is a nice crisp line, so I'm not going to complain about that. Ink today. What is the ink? Well, you've probably already noticed there to the side, haven't you? There's kind of a telltale bottle design there. This is Waterman Serenity Blue. And one reason I chose this ink is I wanted to use a very standard ink with a great reputation, and one that I had a lot of experience with in terms of the dry out test that I was going to do. So in talking about that dry out test and it lasting a couple of days, this is the ink that I used, and it's performed well in other pens in the past. Let's do the speed test before we compare this line to the other pens and see if that little tiny feed can keep up. This is real time, no crazy pressure. I lifted here, that was me. It kept up just fine. Again, it's not an overly wet pen, you can see that there, but it kept up just fine. And the color of that blue is coming through as it goes. Yeah, I think that's just fine. Again, the nib is not scratchy. It's not buttery smooth, but I have no complaints. I think it's a good everyday writer. It is a crisp line, and you see there is some natural variation without even trying, and I do like that. So, on the nib, I like it. I like that there are options, and I kind of regret not trying one of the specialty nibs, but I really wanted to try this in a more standard form since it was a Kickstarter project and a brand new pen out of the gate, kind of untested. So I like the nib. Now I do want to compare it to these other pens because this is a medium and this is a medium, and my Pilot is a medium, and actually, I might as well throw in the TWSBI since I have it out. It's also a medium, and I wanna show you how this kinda stacks up because I think it actually writes definitely a fine, and on some papers, even more like an extra fine to fine. So this is the Phantom. I'm just gonna put a P there. Y'all know what that is, right? Okay, so there's just standard lines. I'm not applying any extra pressure. We're not trying to get variation. Just what does the line look like? This is actually the Curados, not the vanishing point. Hopefully this writes like it's supposed to. When I got it out, it had been writing just fine. I got it out and found out that actually the last time I wrote with it, apparently I had put it up right as I emptied the cartridge and put a new cartridge in. Hopefully it's coming through by now. Okay, now you can really see a difference between the platinum medium and that endless medium, and now you're starting to see what I'm saying about that, right? This is actually the vanishing point. Now, this is a medium. This is not the gold nib. This is the special alloy, they call it. Steel nib, basically. And let me tell you, it's actually a great medium nib. If I'm just going to get a medium nib and a vanishing point, I'm probably just going to get this alloy one because it writes quite well. Well enough, I miss nothing by not getting the gold one. I do have a stub nib in the gold version for this pen, too. And it writes really nicely. This, just so you know, inks. This is just a black cartridge for a platinum. Again, that's Waterman's Serenity Blue, and the Pilot is Pilot Blue Black. Also just a cartridge. And then we have the TWSBI. All right, and this is the Swipe, and this is also a medium. Yovo makes their nibs for them. I think they build that to a certain specification just for TWSBI. There always seems to be there's a different feel, a different feedback feel of Yovo's nibs for TWSBI than some other companies I notice. Even audibly, did you hear that? Little pencil-like. I really like the nib in that pen. That's FPR Neptune Blue, that ink. But you can see that the line on the downstroke, very, very similar here between the TWSBI and the Pilot and the Curados. On the side stroke, the TWSBI's thicker, but the other two, very comparable. Same on the diagonal and same in the little swoop-de-loop. And compared to all of them, the Phantoms is quite thin, much more of a fine, and again on some paper, a fine to extra fine. So keep that in mind when you order it. If you're expecting the medium to be, anything like these down here, it's probably not going to be. But I wouldn't call that a complaint, just, a thing to learn and a thing to know when you're picking your pen. All right, so let's do some closing thoughts on the Phantom. What do I think overall? Overall, I like the pen. Good feel. I do have to be aware of not leaving it in the drawer too long because the dry out resistance is not up to the same standard as the Pilot or the Curados. But if I keep that in mind and use the pen daily, it's great. And I used this in meetings and things like that. The clicking mechanism has been very reliable, no issues whatsoever. I do like that. I would think that those flaps long term are going to contribute to durability because they're not going to wear on the nib. That's a complaint with some other kinds of mechanisms sometimes. It's a comfortable pen, again, to write with. My only other niggle besides that of the dry out would be when it comes down to value at $49. Is this pen made as well so that it feels justifiable against the Pilot or the Curados? Again, these pens are $20 to $30 more depending on your market. Sometimes you can find the Curados on sale because sales of that have kind of slumped a bit. From what I understand, I think it's a great pen, but it is a very unique design in this way. I think design in terms of looks and a lack of awkwardness. Curados, the Phantom looks really good. I do like the design. I like the look of it. I like the design language. And I think on that it competes well. In terms of handiness in a pocket, it's great. There is that little bit of give that I think is in the mechanism, and there's a little bit of rattle when the button's down. You might get a little bit of rattle There is that, and I know some are saying, "Hey, it's only $49," and I think that's because sometimes we get into a rut in fountain pens where we start to talk like $49 should be a reason not to expect higher manufacturing standards, and, well, I don't know about you, but that doesn't fly at my house. When you can buy something at half the price, like the Jinhao, and I know not everybody likes that, I get it, but when you can or when you can get still less expensive, than the Phantom, the, Mahjong A3 or the A3 is fantastic, or the A1, well, you kinda start to get higher expectations, right? Now you change your expectations according to the market that the pen comes from, so you expect some things to be more expensive from certain places, and I understand that. But even factoring that in, its build quality is not at the level of a lot of the competition, even some of the competition that is, less expensive, and you gotta factor that in. It is a good pen. I do like it. I love the style of it, but at the price it is, the competition is stiff. I'm not saying that's not the pen to choose, but I am saying, you're gonna have to think about it, aren't you? I would. I would really have to think about it, and I'm not actually sure at the time that I'm ending this video what I would decide. So help me out. In the comments, what would you decide? What would you pick? Is it a close call for you? Is it an easy pick, and is it this pen, or is it something else? Let us know. And then make sure that you have liked the video and subscribed. Hit that bell if you want to be notified about other pen and ink and paper reviews. And God bless you. Have a great week, and I'll see you in the next video.